Hey, welcome to Perch.Church. My name is Al, and I am the pastor of Perch.Church. And welcome to our seminar, American Spirituality is Weird. I am so grateful that you are joining us. I know that this is kind of a strange topic, so the fact that you are joining us says a lot about you. And that's supposed to be a compliment, but if it doesn't sound like a compliment, I'm sorry. We are a new church plant in Glendale, California. And our vision is to love Jesus and love like Jesus. And we do this through our four core values, which are biblical, relational, open-minded, and service-oriented. And we welcome you to join us every Sunday at 11 o'clock as we gather for our regular Sunday gatherings. But today is special because we have a webinar with a very special guest, Rola Al Ashkar. She is studying to be a minister, and she is also an entrepreneur, and she has a really rich life story, and she has a unique perspective on American spirituality. So she and I are colleagues, and we are both pastors or ministers together. And currently she is a pastoral resident at a church in Sacramento, and I'm located down in Southern California. But yeah, I've known her for like several months now, and we've been in the same cohort together. And I've just always learned a lot from her perspective and her experience. So it's really great to have her joining us. But before we get into our webinar, if you want to learn anything about our church, if you want to support our church, or if you want to get more content that's similar to this, or more traditional Sunday gatherings, you can visit us at www.perch.church. And we hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. And we are so grateful that you're joining us on this Thanksgiving weekend. So first of all, Rola, thank you so much for joining us today.
Unmuting myself. Thank you for inviting me, Al. I'm so excited about talking to you and just getting to know a little bit about your new worshiping community.
Yeah, so as we dialogue, I'll share a little bit about myself too, because I guess I kind of have a unique perspective on American spirituality as well, being like a Korean American. But you actually did not grow up in America, right? So you want to tell all our participants where you grew up and maybe a little bit about what your childhood was like in your childhood years.
Well, that's correct. I am originally Lebanese. You can tell from my accent. I grew up in Lebanon. Just came to the States only 3 years ago. Um, I don't know if many people know where Lebanon is. It's on the Mediterranean. You probably have heard of Syria and Palestine. We're right there. So yeah, my childhood there. I was born during the Civil War in Lebanon, and we've had so many wars throughout my life. The latest of which was in 2006 when I was in college. So it was tough to grow up in wars, and to me it was normal. I feel like I had a normal childhood and normal teenage years, because you just get used to it and it just becomes part of everyday life. So I was fairly happy. Yeah, happier than adulthood, I would say.
Wow, like you followed your saying you grew up in Civil War, and then you said I was fairly happy. Well, when you say you grew up like in kind of like a war-torn like nation, and during like civil unrest and civil war, how close was that? Like physically, how close was that? Like, did you ever hear like, gunshots and like bombs going off? Or like was it like you knew that it was going on kind of thing?
Well, so to be honest, I mean, I was born when I was 4 years, the civil war ended in Lebanon, but the aftermath of the war has not stopped until this day. So, well, one of my childhood memories was when all five of us, my parents and siblings and I, would sleep in the corridor of the house because that's the safest room, and we just like put our mattresses on the floor and sleep there. And I've asked my parents, like, why are we not sleeping in our rooms tonight? And the answer was because the bombing was heavy. So I remember that fairly well. And I remember that at the entrance of our building, there used to be bags of sand, because these will help kind of absorb the shock. So like I do remember some of those memories. Growing up after that, it was more like continuous events that happen every now and then. And if you will, I mean, I think the easiest way to help Americans understand it is, you know how 2020 has been for all of us, for the entire world. I think that's what the 30 years of life in Lebanon were like. It was like always
Oh my
uncertainty.
gosh.
There's like some bombing going on somewhere. There is some Israeli attack going on in the south. There's, you know, there's always something going on. So
Mhm.
it's not a continuous war. It's like periods in what's the word? It's like it's a series of events. It's a series of unfortunate events, and every now
Yeah,
and then there have been
yeah,
a war. Yeah.
yeah. Not like constant nonstop, but kind of like intermittent. Like there's one every like once in a
Yeah,
while.
it's a very unstable, politically unstable country since it's becoming a nation. So it's always been the case. But to answer your question of how close, back in 2006, the entrance to my village was bombed, and we could definitely hear the bombs all night. It was close. Yeah.
That sounds kind of scary. Like even for me, I grew up in like urban LA, and I could hear like once in a while I could hear like drive-bys and shootings and like police sirens almost every day. That to me was kind of scary, but kind of hearing yours, like my childhood sounds like a walk in the park. But like I don't know, how much of that do you still carry that stuff with you, or yeah, does it still kind of affect you today in any way?
I mean, it toughens you. 2020 didn't break me the way it did other people, honestly. I think some of us living in countries like my country have are just used to uncertainty. I personally am used to uncertainty. You know, like, you know, some of my personal story about trying to be in the US and having to get the visa and waiting for the visa and all that. um, I mean, I know someone who's in high school who didn't get to graduate this year because of the what was going on. And I said, well, you know, I never graduated from college because it was dangerous to leave my house. So in some way, it's still with me. It really toughened me. I can face uncertainties, and even I was never scared in the US with the events that were happening because we're just used to it. It's part of life.
So people like you who might have grown up in areas like the Middle East, or very like tense, stressful, or uncertain childhoods are much better equipped to handle 2020 than maybe most Americans were.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. I guess that's one benefit of growing up the way you did. So, like you said, you went to college, but because of the situation, like you kind of had like a interesting career path. I think
Mhm.
you've told me that you were used to be a flight attendant and also a professional dancer. Were those the only two careers that you've had in your life?
Not really.
No, no. What are the
so,
various things that you've done?
so my first degree, my bachelor was in computer sciences, and I worked in a software company the first 3 years after I graduated. Well, technically, I also taught in a school. I taught computers in a school for special needs, but for a really short period of time, couple of months. And then I found a job at the software company. I was a software consultant. And then when I left that job to go to seminary, I became a flight attendant at the same time because it allows you flexibility to choose, you know, your school days. And after working at the airlines, I also designed online courses for the American University in Beirut. And then after that, I came to the States. So I've had quite a few careers. The
That's
dancing thing,
cool.
yeah, the dancing thing is interesting because I honestly wouldn't call myself professional dancer. I mean, I got paid to perform, but it's a Middle Eastern thing where you hire a certain group to perform at weddings. So we call it Zaffa, and that's specific for weddings. And it exists in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, I think Iraq. Like, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries have the same tradition. And I used to be part of a Zaffa. So it's mostly like we perform for weddings. I did that for 7 years. And
But
I got
that was
paid.
kind of like on the side of everything else that was going on.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was along with seminary and a full-time job and
Okay. Okay.
youth group and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what kind of valuable life lessons have you learned from? Well, I kind of want to ask you about each of the careers, but like let's just
Mm,
do like the flight attendant one first. Like, what valuable life lessons have you learned from
mm.
being a flight attendant?
I think a sense of purpose. It's an interesting life because people from the outside look at us like that it's something very special, and in some way it is, because how many people get to be on an airplane for 4 days a week, or you get to like shop in London and have dinner in Paris, and oh, I'm sorry I can't make it this weekend, I'll be on an ocean in Africa. So it was interesting, but you could get easily sucked into that life, which is very purposeless. Honestly, it's after I did that job for 5 years. I think my last year I was unhappy. You just feel like where is that going? I mean, shopping in Paris and London is fun, but eventually you just don't have a purpose. So that's the time I was really thinking like, why do I exist? What am I doing on this earth?
I actually have a couple flight attendant friends who, because from an outsider's perspective, like it sounds very exciting, going to all these like exotic places and new cities, but like a couple of them like mentioned that it's actually quite lonely, which is really interesting because like you're surrounded by people all the time, right? But like if you go to this new city, you kind of have one of them said they had like different groups of friends in each like major city, and another one said like they just stay in their hotel room all night or whatever, and it's they stop venturing out. Did you find that to be the case at all, like loneliness?
Yeah, because you have no social life. Like I remember my friends complained because I was also doing the dancing at the same time. So I was busy most weekends and traveling most weekdays. You have no social life because and we, for example, we get to take either a person would get Christmas or New Year's off. Like one, you have to choose one of the two. So one year you get Christmas, another year you're working on Christmas. Like I remember flying to Paris the night of New Year's Eve, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, like I get to spend New Year's in Paris. And it was terrible. Paris is, I don't know in the States how they do. I think they do the same. In my country, all the restaurants are open because this is time for business, but everything was closed. And like seriously, we couldn't find a place to get a meal. Like we were starving and we just needed to go out and eat. Yeah, and you're traveling with a different crew every time, and sometimes you're with people, sometimes you're with people you think are friendly, and sometimes you're with people you really don't want to hang out with. So it is lonely. It is, the lifestyle will interfere with holidays, family, just everything.
Well, what about like anything you've observed, and this could be as a like when you were dancing too, like anything you've observed of like people's behavior or the way that different um, like the people from different countries like behave or like treat like flight attendants or like dancers or things like that. Have you
Oh,
noticed any like this?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You do learn a lot about people. Um, I mean, you learn to not make assumptions. That's the first thing. I remember funny story. I worked in business class, and in business class, we had a rule that we had plastic cups and we had glass. And if a business class customer asks you for water, you have to take a glass. And there's this man who comes to the I'm just standing there, just doing my thing. He comes forward, he leaves his seat, and he comes in. He wants water, and he's wearing jeans and a shirt, and I just give him a plastic cup, and I'm not, I shouldn't have done that. And then later I learned that he's the head of security in my country. And I don't watch the news, so I didn't recognize his face. But you
Oh my
learn not to
gosh.
make assumptions about people just because he's the only one who's not wearing a suit and a tie in the business class doesn't mean, so you learn a lot about people in nationalities, as you said, and how they treat, like, I mean, I'm sorry if there's any Lebanese watching this, but I think our worst customers were the Lebanese people.
Oh no. Well, we tend to be the most critical of our own people, right? So, like, I think
Yeah.
Korean people are the worst. I shouldn't say that, but no, I love Korean people, but they're the worst. But like you found like your own people to be, or yeah, you don't think it's like you're being a little subjective, like you're being more critical of your own people?
No, it's true. I know my
They're
culture
bad.
well, and yeah, there's a little bit of arrogance there. So let's just name it.
All right, all right. So you also mentioned how you were a part of like a youth group, and then you later went to graduate school. You studied at seminary, and that's ultimately what brought you to America. You studied at Princeton Theological Seminary, right, in the East Coast. What so did you grow up Christian, or what was your faith story like? Yeah.
Yeah. So in my country, you are born into a religion. You don't have a choice about it. It's on your record. So I come from a Christian family. As you know, for those of you who don't remember, Christianity was born in the Middle East. So
Yep.
yeah, the first Christians were in Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. So I don't know exactly the history of my family, but I'm assuming we've always been Christian. But religions become nominal because you don't choose them. They're kind of forced on you. It's a culture. It's more of a cultural thing. So though my family is Christian, I don't think anyone in my whole, even extended family, cared about going to church. Um, my parents occasionally took us to church, like most people, probably on Christmas and Easter. We were never told to pray or taught to read our Bibles or anything like that. But uh, the Holy Spirit managed to to get me and my brother to participate in a confirmation class at my church. And I don't know if I mentioned that, but um, Presbyterians or Protestants in general in my country are only 1% of the population. So we're minorities in the minority in the minority. So to go to the Presbyterian church was kind of weird to me because the school I went to, the culture, everything else is heavily Catholic. Um, and then my church always felt like this strange church we go to every now and then they had us go to confirmation class and they gave us a Bible. And little me, rule follower Rula, told my brother that the pastor told us to read the Bible, so we have to do that. So I like would force my brother, my little brother, to sit in and start reading. And I suddenly had this sense of curiosity grow in me, and I'm a critical thinker. I've always been. So even at what 10 years old, I would read and make notes of things that look odd to me or sounded like there's a conflict there. Like, what does that really mean? So I started doing that. I have friends who will go to the Presbyterian church and they're from Syria. We're very, very close, just 1 hour from my house to their houses in Syria. And they went to the summer camp and they took me the first time. I went with them to summer camp, and this is when I really fell in love with my church, and I wanted to go
That's when your
back.
faith really kind of like grew
At
or
first, it was like just going to play with my friends, right? But those
yeah,
camps, they're designed in a way they're fun, but there's content there, and yeah, that something happened to me there. God put in me this curiosity, but also this like love of service, and I just started going every year, and I started dragging my parents to church, and they still go until this day because I used to drag them.
yeah. No, no, I totally relate with that because like when I was in high school, I wanted to learn how to play drums and join the join the praise band because I wanted to like look cool for girls. But that actually, like, I actually picked up drums pretty quickly, and that actually forced me to go to church every Sunday and every like Friday night Bible study and all the retreats, all the camps, you know. And then that actually that kind of like made me like take my faith more seriously. So I
Yeah.
totally like relate with that. So like so Catholic in Lebanon, like Catholic Church is like the big like Christianity, right? But it's also still like a lot of it's also a heavily like Muslim country, right?
Yeah, so back in 1975, before the Civil War, um, it used to be heavily Christian. It used to be some like 65% Christian, and the rest was Muslim. And after the war, only 15 years later, uh, it switched. So when I was growing up, it used to be kind of a half Christian, half Muslim. Now, when I talk about it being heavily Catholic, I'm just talking about my own. The school I went to was Catholic. Just like our friend, I had Muslim friends, but and we weren't heavy on religion growing up. It wasn't something we talked about at home.
So even like
Yeah.
Muslim friends that you had, it's not like they were like hardcore Muslim. They were for the most part,
No,
they were also
no.
nominal.
So what people don't understand here is that Muslim doesn't mean bad, or it's they were they were Muslim as much as we were Christian. We celebrated the major holidays, and we had some traditions related to religion, but no, I mean we had best friends growing up who were Muslims, like friends of my family, and their kids were our friends, and really that was like the closest people to us, and we spent so much time in each other's houses, and we ate together, and yeah, when you talk about the hardcore Muslim, I think you're talking about extremists, and for the most part, that's not the case. It's very rare. I mean, I grew up in a mixed village, so that helps when like people coexist, and we've coexisted in the Middle East for decades and centuries.
Yeah. Well, so the war and all that stuff is mostly like political. It's not so much like religious then.
Back in the days in the Civil War, it used to be Christian Muslim, but Lebanon is so unique in that it's very sectarian. Now
Mm,
it's more like, so political parties are affiliated with a certain religion, that's for sure.
mm.
But then now you have like a Christian party and a Muslim party, that's one coalition, and then there's another Christian party that's a Muslim. So it's like
That's
now it's no
interesting.
longer, yeah, it's no longer
Yeah.
Christian versus Muslim, though at some point in history that was the case. At some point in history, even before that, it was Maronites. That's a specific branch of Christianity, and that's what I mean by
Hmm.
Catholic. It's actually Maronite. It's Eastern Catholic, and Druze. That's like a branch of Islam. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting because like I mean, it's not like we're in like war or anything like that, but you know, here they typically like most Americans see like Republicans as like if you're a white evangelical, you have to be Republican, right? If you're like a deist or like agnostic or like yeah, then you're like or an atheist, then you're a Democrat, right? So I think Americans think so dualistically. So hearing you say that, I think it's actually really, really interesting. Okay, so let's talk about your transition to America then. Like, because that wasn't that long ago for you, right? So
Mhm.
like when you moved to America, when you moved to the States, what were some of the big differences in culture that you noticed like right away,
Hmm.
like your first year of living here?
Yeah, so before I moved to live here, I did an internship at a church in Huntsville, Alabama, 5 years ago, and that's when I had the cultural shock. Honestly, it's the
Alabama. Oh my
yeah,
God. I
I
think I would
know.
have cultural shock if I moved there.
I didn't know I didn't know that states are so different. Anyway, I think it's the culture of abundance that Americans live in. I really don't know if people here know that they live in luxury. I mean, I didn't
Yes.
know I was
Yes.
poor until I came to America. And I don't think I am poor, but
It's
I'm
funny.
classified as poor. And I think I'm a luxurious form of poor because I travel and have expensive hobbies, and it's really interesting. I was like, I'm not poor. Well, yeah, yes, you are. I'm like, all right, I guess like I really enjoy being poor. If that was poor
Wait,
for
so
you,
even
you know.
as an adult, like working full time as like a flight attendant, you were that are you talking about your childhood?
Yeah, well, actually, I was talking about being in the States. I didn't know I was poor until I was here. But back home, I think the quality of life that I have now is a little bit similar, but a little bit better than what I had back home, even with like my really good jobs that paid me well. But for us, like I didn't realize that the quality of life that I had back home was not considered that good. That there's a lot of abundance and luxury in this country that people are not aware of. So I would be considered middle class to poor here, and I'm still doing better than what I was doing back home, and I had full-time jobs and stuff like that. So that's the thing that I was mostly shocked about. It's that you people don't realize what you have. You really don't appreciate the things that you have, and you always want
Especially
more.
if that's the only thing that we've had, if that's really like the only experience that we know. Yeah, that is true. Like, I mean, I remember bits and pieces because I was born in Korea and I moved here when I was like really, really young. So I remember bits and pieces and how much more I have now, like living in America than when I was a little kid with my parents like struggling like in like a little apartment in South Korea. So I remember bits and pieces, but still, like for the most part, yeah. If we grew up this way, it's just normal, but it's actually not normal for most of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I even noticed that too with like church. Now that I'm a pastor and uh, in America, like bigger is better, right? You talked about like abundance, right? And I even noticed that with like spirituality and with church too. Like, and I think this was especially highlighted like maybe 10 years ago when there was this little book called Prayer of Jabez came out. I don't know if you know what that book is.
What is it called again?
It's called Prayer of Jabez, and it's this book that's based on this very, very short prayer in the Old Testament that's prayed by this man named Jabez, where he asks God to expand his territory, right? And um, and it just that book was like a national bestseller, and that was kind of like that reflected the spirituality in America. And now, as I'm trying to start a new church, and I go to these like church planting like conferences, and I've gone to like other church planting trainings and things like that. Not the cohort that you and I are a part of, but like other stuff that I've been a part of. And they make it sound like if you don't launch your church with like 200 people, then your church is a failure, right? And I'm like, why does everything have to be that is so when you're talking about like America being this land of abundance, that's definitely true. And that's definitely like there's a lot of benefits to that, but at the same time there's also a lot of like um it's very toxic too. It's like not necessarily a good thing all the time to have so much. I don't know if you've noticed that at all, particularly in the area of like American Christianity, because I've definitely noticed it, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just having more, it's really not helping. There's a TED talk about choices. I'll be happy to send that to you, about how having too many choices is actually harmful, especially when people elsewhere do not have choices. And the speaker did a great, like, he just ended it very good. He translated that into resources, because then we have so many resources, we don't even use them, and some people are starving elsewhere. So yeah, more is less.
I'm muted, sorry. Is the person's name Barry Schwartz? Is it this one right here? Do
Let
you see
me
it?
see. Yeah, that's the guy, the
Yeah.
paradox of choice. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. I just
Yeah,
wanted to show
have
it
you
to my.
seen it? Yeah.
No, I haven't. I'm gonna check it out later, but I wanted to show it for our participants so that they could find it later. Barry Schwartz. Okay,
Highly recommend it.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost I don't know if there's another term for it called like this decision paralysis, where if you have like too many decisions, like you really don't, it's like so overwhelming, right? And in many ways, like we've made faith and spirituality this thing that's supposed to be relatively simple, not easy, but it's supposed to be relatively simple, and we've made it so complex, right? And really it's about like your intimate relationship with God, loving your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And just practicing the teachings of Jesus Christ. And we've made it so complex, especially like in the church.
Yeah, and I really don't understand why do you need, in a town like Sacramento where I am, why do you need 5 or 6 PCUSA churches with 30 members each? That's one thing I really don't understand. And that also feeds into this theme of like abundance versus like, is this really having more? There is so much, but it doesn't feel like abundance. So it's just, churches here split over things big and small, and it's easier to split than, start your own thing than try to reconcile. So that's part of my frustration as well with this culture of just like having more and more. When you apply it to church and spirituality, I think that's like the complete opposite of what Jesus meant by his movement. I don't want to call it Christianity, but I think I think it's the opposite of what we're called to be as Christians.
Yeah, and the word that was used to describe the followers of Jesus Christ in the New Testament was the word ecclesia, right? And it really what's really it might, you might relate more with this. It's the word ecclesia was not a word for organization, right? It's actually a word that meant like what you said. It's a movement. It's a social political movement, right? And that was the best word that could describe what the early church was, these followers of Jesus Christ. Especially if you think about the way that Jesus started his ministry, he literally, he would move. He wouldn't ever stay still in the same place, right? He would go from one town to another, right? Talking about and teaching about the kingdom of God and performing all these miracles and really like modeling what it means to like love God and love your neighbor. So what you're saying about like the church being a movement, that is like spot on. And I don't know if we've moved away from that, especially in America. Like we just want to like stay still and like kind of plant ourselves and like not move, like, and I don't know how much of that reflects like our Western mentality or if it's normal. Yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this train of thought, but like that's really interesting that you called the church a movement.
No, I'm with you on that, Al. Especially that that one of the big differences in culture that I really don't get is how everything in the States is set according to certain standards. And God forbid you find an exception or something that doesn't fit in. And that's frustrating when you apply it to the church, because then you're expected to fit in a certain mold. And Jesus was like a radical reformer, and his followers were called to do things that are against the norm.
Um, is there anything from Lebanon that you really miss?
Mm, community for sure. Yeah, I mean, there is. I don't think I don't think freedom is equal to individualism. I think if I were to
Yes.
create the perfect society, I would bring some of the freedom of the culture of America with the community that you find in the Middle East, and find something in between. It's sad that we have gone to the extremes with each of them, but um, I definitely miss being able to identify as part of something bigger. And even church here does not fulfill that for me.
What can you I love that phrase that you said, like that freedom is not synonymous or is not the same thing as individuality, or
Yeah.
can you expand on that a little bit? Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, this country is all about praising individualism, right? Like you do whatever you want, you dress whichever way you want. You are the I am the center, it doesn't matter if you're offended that I'm going on the street without clothes. I'm just expressing myself, so this individualism is really harmful, I think. And there is a limit to where that becomes not building to the community. I go back to the letter of Paul. I go back to Corinthians, where he goes, well, I mean, what do you do if someone criticizes your diet today or asks you if you eat meat or something? And Paul dares to say, if meat is going to cause your sibling to stumble, let's just put that on hold for now. It's okay. Don't eat meat. So like this individualism
And
has
some
been
people,
like.
some Americans might think of that as like, oh, you're like restricting my freedom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But I don't think freedom exists apart from the other, because like, well, yeah, I'm free to put a gun in your head and shoot you. No, that's not freedom. I think individualism has been wrongly identified with individualism, and I don't think it's a value to praise, and this country is all about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting that you brought up that gun illustration, because like one of the things that people say, because like Americans are all crazy about guns and owning guns and having
Mm-hmm,
guns, right?
mm-hmm,
And they say like, oh, you're taking away my freedom by taking away my gun, right?
mm-hmm.
But actually, like, because we have so many guns in America, like that's why we have so much gun violence. And uh, like freedom cannot exist outside of community,
No,
right? Like if it's, there has to be that balance, like, and if my freedom is imposing on my neighbor's safety, then I'm restricting their freedom, right? And like freedom has to be, it's shared. It's not an individual thing. It's not supposed to be possessed as individuals. It's supposed to be possessed as a collective community, and that is so,
absolutely.
yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true.
And this year, if anything, this year has taught us how much your freedom affects the
Yes,
others. And it's
yeah.
not a real freedom unless you're, as you said, unless it's played for the community, not only for yourself.
Yeah. Like if you're a irresponsible college student going to like a party at the beach and like sharing like, and like spreading COVID, but you're not affected because you're young, but then you know, in, but then you give it to your grandparents and then they get sick and die. Is that really freedom?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, man, that is, this year really shifting what freedom means like as a nation. No,
I
not
hope
not
so. I see people protesting having to wear a mask. I really hope so. It's it is frustrating. You are touching people's most sacred values, and that's why I say, this is very central in this country. It's one of the core values. Maybe that's my own observation, but
individuality, you mean, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. And even like in faith as well, like we carry that over to our faith, to our detriment. Like even when we serve others, oh God, like even when we serve others, a lot of American Christians do it to make themselves feel good.
Mm.
It's not really like the sense of responsibility, right? It's not the sense of like duty that like um when I'm like serving others, like they're my brothers and sisters, right? We're like in this together. So it's more because like, oh no, like I serve others so to make myself feel good, which that like bleeds into the whole individuality like mentality, which is terrible. Like even in faith. But yeah, that is so true. What you're saying. Okay, this is kind of like off topic, but like something else I wanted to ask you was like, what do you miss in Lebanon? Like, do you miss like food at all? Is there
Of
anything like,
course.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
maybe
my
we could do
God.
another interview just on that. But like, yeah, what are some like food things? Because like I imagine it's probably hard to find really good Lebanese food here.
I definitely miss the food. And it's another one of the peculiarities of the great American empire is that you don't have to do anything. We'll do everything for you. We'll cut
Mm.
your parsley and we'll sell it to you in a plastic bag. So I do really miss I miss fruit that have taste because you've collected them when they're ripe and because you're just getting that lettuce out of the soil and we bring it home with the mud still on it and we clean it because it's fresh and it just tastes so fresh. And here, like, I don't know how much time had passed since they collected the fruits or the vegetables before it gets to the consumers. So it's just like food is tasteless. I mean, I always say you don't know what they feed you in this country.
Yeah. And all
I
we
miss,
really know is like sweet, salty, spicy, sour, right? Like there's
yeah,
and the very little like subtle
yeah.
flavors in between that we might be missing.
But also like the natural state of thing. I think my roommate said something interesting the other day. Well, I don't remember what was it, but she didn't know that this is how this thing grows. Like because she only sees it in a package. So yeah, I miss everything natural from people to food to relations to church. Yeah, everything.
And another thing that I know that you're really passionate about is yoga, and
Yeah.
are you still studying to be a yoga instructor, and you want to kind of incorporate that into what you want to do as like a minister?
Yeah, it has been a really grounding practice for me, and I have been encountering God on my yoga mat, just in my own practice, in regular yoga classes. So yeah, it is still the plan, and that's gonna happen very soon. I'm going to be moving to my next uh, church next month, actually, or January, where I'm going to start a yoga based new worshiping community.
Oh my God, that's
Um,
awesome. Can you
yeah.
describe like, well, where's this new where are you gonna move to?
I'm gonna still be in Sacramento and
Oh, okay,
specifically in downtown. I'm like not leaving
okay,
downtown. It's just a different
okay,
church.
great.
Yeah, I'm planning to start something that doesn't exist here. At least I've seen it in Alabama, where it's a Christian spirituality infused with yoga. So you
That's
meditate
awesome.
around a biblical verse or value, or it's inspired by Christian spirituality, and it's going to be kind of like mind, body, spirit kind of healing.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Can I, are you gonna offer online classes? Can I take an online class?
I have not thought about it. I think to me it's important to keep the integrity of the class by just keeping it
Yeah, in
close. But
person.
I
Yeah,
will be I will be providing resources to go online. Maybe it's just going to be me and just a guided practice. I don't have those people yet. So when I have the people, if few members of the community are okay with it, we can do something online, maybe a lifetime or pre-recorded. So that's a good idea. Thank you.
yeah. No, I mean, well, because that's how I'm doing all of my yoga stuff at home now, is like guided stuff, because I can't go to classes. But
Yeah.
I find like when I do yoga too, it really does ground me. And some of my best prayers or like connection to God happens on the yoga mat. Um,
Wow.
because like there's just something about yoga where like it like empties your mind, right? And
Hmm.
it just really helps you get to this like mental and physical, obviously physical space where you could really connect with God.
We
And
need to talk after this, Al. I need your testimony.
no, I love it. And I don't know why some like conservative churches are so anti-yoga. Like,
Yeah.
I know its roots are like found in Hinduism, but there's a lot of stuff that we do that are not Christian in its origins. But you could actually weave in your own like spirituality to it. So I don't know. Like American people like make a big deal out of like nothing sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm trying to break that, that kind of thought.
Yeah, those kinds of like stereotypes.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
stereotype.
Yeah. So, well, this is kind of like the last question I wanted to ask you, which is kind of related to, the yoga thing. But like, if you were to lead your own studio, like kind of like, I guess it would kind of be like a faith-based studio, right? Um, what do you hope to do with it? Like, and like, how would that be like a vehicle to accomplish like maybe the mission that you have for your own life, the purpose that you have for your life?
So I feel like God had called me to be in this country for a reason, and it's become clear to me that it's part of that is educating people on what's going on in my side of the world, and how things that happen here that are normal or even that are considered good are actually really hurting people in the Middle East. So I'm hoping to establish a community that is more educated and more knowledgeable and more connected, and that can hopefully politically influence the way we do church. I really appreciated that you called the Christian movement as socio-political, because that's what it was. Jesus'
Yes.
main message was against the Roman occupation, and forgive
Yes.
me for that, but I often see a lot of similarities between Rome and America.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I really want to say here that I think it's a great country. I'm not just criticizing here, but I'm just saying about the things that I see, especially in the context of church, that should not make sense. That should not be part of our norm. I think Christians should be. I I'll give you an example, and I hope that's not problematic to some. I think every honest Christian who's loyal to their faith should be lobbying against supporting the state of Israel because of all the injustice that they do in Palestine and in the rest of the Middle East. I have my own perspective that people are often surprised to hear about it. And I think the community that I want to nurture, I want them to be more mindful of what's outside this bubble that Americans live in, and how me being Christian, I have a duty to not only my immediate community but also the rest of the world, and how there are so many practices that we do in this country that are really harmful to others. So I
Yes.
want to nurture this mindfulness of what's going on across the borders and elsewhere in
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that like most traditional churches do is, well, before COVID, is like gather together and like sing songs together. And in singing these songs together, there's a sense of like connection with the community, like saying these same words, like in the same notes and all of that stuff. I think um, doing that like in the context of yoga would be very powerful, like doing these movements together, right? Like praying the same prayers together and like meditating on the same like thoughts together. I think that could be very, very powerful. And then moving in the body, you're also moving together in the spirit. I think that could be really, really powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for you for
Thank
this
you.
next season of your life, Rilla.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, any kind of closing thoughts before we sign off? I just want to thank you again, Rola, for doing this. This has been really rich. I think we could go on for a couple more hours, but I do want to limit it to like less than an hour to respect everyone's time and to respect your time. But yeah, any kind of like closing thoughts or things you want to say?
Well, thank you. I'm honored that you asked me to be part of this. I just want to say, like, really, I don't dislike this country. I am specifically asked to shed the light on things that we need to be mindful of. So please don't get me as like I hate America. I really love America. I really hope nothing I said had offended anyone.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and um, like one of the things that Jesus was like pushing against was nationalism, empire nationalism during the Roman
Amen.
Empire
Amen
period,
to
you know, and like
that.
Roman Empire was at the time, but probably in history, the most powerful nation in the world, you know, and so um, and one of the things that we have to remember as like followers of Jesus Christ, but even as like people of God, even if you don't label yourself as a Christian, like we are God's children first and foremost, right? And um, we are citizens of this nation, like secondary. That's very, very secondary to who we are as brothers and sisters of the human race. So, your thoughts on like freedom being found in community, your thoughts on like understanding the impact that we have as Americans on the rest of the world, and just being more mindful of what's happening in the rest of the world. All of that stuff is like so very valuable and like much needed in our country. So thank you so much again, Rilla, for spending some time with us today, this morning. And I guess I'll see you on next week though. Yeah,
See you
in our
soon.
cohort. Okay, bye.
Bye.